You ever get so mad remembering a group project from over 25 years ago while you're brushing your teeth? Yeah, me too. Welcome to Justice Sensitivity, where the rage is real, the memory is eternal, and no, Andy, I won't just let it go. Hey, I'm Dr. Regina, PhD, and I'm a coach for late diagnosed neurodivergent nerds who want to learn all the ways their divergent brains have been quietly running the show, or maybe not so quietly. In this episode, Russ and I are talking about justice sensitivity, that gut level reaction many neurodivergent folk have when something feels unfair. If you're not already signed up, click the link in the show notes to get Nerd Notes, my weekly neurodivergent education resource and discussion newsletter, and the companion to our Divergent Paths podcast. So let's get into this.
Okay, well, so we spent a few minutes there, like beforehand. I was trying to figure out, like, how do I start the show? And then you dropped this name, Andy. Who are you talking about?
There's actually an Andy in our past that I picked that name for.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess we'll
Partially.
hear more, and we'll hear more as we go along, perhaps.
Oh, no,
Here.
I'm not going to actually talk about Andy, but at all.
All right, we're gonna have to figure this out.
Honestly, I was just trying to come up with a gender neutral name because my first instinct was to be like, no, Karen.
Right. Okay. Well,
there are some Karens I know that I like, and I feel like Karen has gotten a bad rap.
It has. I would hate to be named Karen right now.
Right?
Right. Well, okay. So at some point during this episode, you might hear me go, "Oh," and that's me realizing who we're talking about. But we'll have to stay tuned, I guess we'll say. All right. So we've got yet another one that I have not heard of. I when I saw the episode title, I thought, "Oh, cool, we're doing a Marvel episode." But no, Justice Sensitivity is not a Marvel character. So
it's not a Marvel
tell me, what is this?
Man, it would be fascinating if that was a Marvel character. Like, they should make Justice Sensitivity a Marvel character.
I feel like a lot of the Marvel characters actually might have this, though, right?
They actually, yeah, they definitely would. Right? So justice sensitivity is an intense emotional response to a perceived injustice toward yourself, toward other people, or to, the world in general. Just like being sensitive to injustice.
Okay. That's in the world that we're currently in, that's going to be difficult to pick out for someone.
Yes. This is an exhausting world.
Yeah, it really is.
This is an exhausting world. If you have justice sensitivity right now, is a really hard time to have that as a function that's going on, because there's a lot of injustice going around.
Okay, so let's narrow it down a little bit. What kind of situations really light you up in your sense of justice?
So for me, I think there's both definitely a sense of personal injustice when I feel like it's injustice that's impacting me personally. But I also have a lot of pro-social justice sensitivity where I'm worried about how things impact people who are not me.
Right.
I regularly wear a sweatshirt that says "Protect Trans Kids," and I suspect that people see that and assume that I have a trans child, but I don't. This is just something that is very important to me, but not because of how it's impacting me personally, because of how it impacts, a community that is, closely aligned to me, but not directly impacting me or, my family. So
do you think you've always had this type of reaction, or is this a late life? I'm gonna say yes.
For 30 years. And we have joked about some of the fights that we had at our first job. So right. I think that I do think I did have very, very much a sense of justice sensitivity when I was younger, especially when I was a teenager. And I was very vocal about things that were, injustices that I perceived when I was
Right.
younger. So
Yeah, you would even fire people.
I think it's more pinpointed now than it was then.
Right. So this is something that I've not asked you before. As you're researching these things and as you're figuring things out over the last few years, when did you realize, like, when you saw what this is, you're like, oh, well, that's me.
Yes.
And how did you realize that? Like, what was the process there of that realization?
A lot of my exploration around neurodivergence has come from TikTok and from short form content, where I got into kind of algorithm where I was being presented more and more information about the things that people who are neurodivergent experience. And through that, there have been a handful of things that hit, and I was like, oh my God, what a relief. Rejection sensitivity being the most important of those, because I never understood why I was so sensitive about certain things. Like I'm very sensitive about potentially being criticized or rejected. And so learning that rejection sensitivity was something very common for people who have neurodivergence in general, but especially for people who have late diagnosed neurodivergence, because like you didn't know what was going on for so long, right?
Right.
So that was particularly justice sensitivity comes right on the heels of that, where learning about it, I had one of those aha moments and so many different pieces of how I fight the world, because I fight a lot, became a lot clearer to me. It became, oh, I'm not just feeling this way, because I feel this way. Like my brain is hardwired for this.
So after you found this out, did it change the way that you're reacting to things, or did you try to temper this a little bit to pull back on this? Because I would assume, like, feeling this all of the time would be quite exhausting.
Yeah, I think that being medicated helped a little to mediate this, where I don't feel as driven to fight everybody's fights. I think that comes with age a little bit too. I'm still very, pro-social. I'm very anti-racist. I'm very, trans rights. All of that are things that are very near and dear to my heart, and I still fight very hard for. But I don't feel the overwhelming urge to try to rescue everybody that I think I felt when I was younger, and
Hmm.
didn't know that this was part of how my brain worked.
Right. When you look way back, like, let's go back to the childhood days here.
Yeah, I have a
Um,
great story from early
oh, really?
childhood.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
from kindergarten. Actually, I have a very vivid memory of being in kindergarten, and we had a substitute teacher. And my name is Regina, right? And she told me to write my name on something, and I didn't know how to make a G, and I told her that. And like I said, this was a substitute, this wasn't my teacher. And I told her that I don't know how to make a G, and she's like, you'll figure it out, or something to that effect.
Mm.
And I was
Hmm.
pissed. And and like this is a long time ago, and I still remember, and I can still feel that the warmth of that anger as we're recording.
Right.
So I went and I grabbed a book, and I found a G in the book because I could identify, I just didn't know how to write one. And I wrote it like the G was in the book. And it was a font where, like, the G almost looks like two circles, like on top of each other. Like it didn't have the
Right.
circle and like the swoop underneath it. It almost looked like. So I drew in great detail and very carefully that G.
Okay.
and she blasted me for it.
Ugh.
And so here I was, I had presented to her that I didn't know how to do it. I went on my own and figured out a workaround, because this is what neurodivergent brains do. They figure things out. I figured out a workaround, and then I presented her with the solution I came up with when I had originally presented her with the fact that I didn't know how to do this. And that just set me into an absolute rage. And I shut down at that point. I remember not saying anything because I didn't know what to say at that. Like I said, I was 5. I wasn't going to be able to advocate for myself in this other than I already had, and I had plenty.
Right.
But I remember just kind of shutting down and being thankful that this wasn't my teacher that I had this interaction with, that it was that it was a substitute teacher. But
Right.
yes, I very much remember knowing that it was, I couldn't have named it. I didn't have the word for injustice at
Right.
5, but I knew it was an injustice. And I knew I had been treated unfairly. I had been held to an expectation that I couldn't maintain and was inappropriate for me to attempt to. But the whole thing was inappropriate. Like, who is a kindergarten teacher and has a child say, I don't know how to write a G, and tell them to figure it out? Like,
Right. Right.
know,
Yeah, that's no good.
no. And looking at it with, years of teaching experience and going, she was probably flooded. She was probably in a space where she couldn't address it. But at the same time, like, you should have enough self-reflection
Right.
to be able to say,
Right.
okay, go sit down, and I'm going to get, things settled with like whatever's happening or whatever. Because I don't remember any of the environment. Like, as you age, your memories kind of boil down to just like specific things. I don't remember what was going on in the classroom or anything like that. I don't remember what she looks like. I don't remember anything about her,
Right.
other than the fact that she wasn't, Miss Kelly, who was my regular teacher.
Right. Right. Well, thinking about that, I'm now thinking about on the teacher side of things, right? With you as a teacher, did you, either when in your years of teaching or in other careers, did your sense of fairness ever like get you into trouble at work or cause issues at work?
Sure. I mean,
Did
I worked as I'm shaking my head as I'm answering this, because there are so many like,
I know, it's like, can you share one? Just
yeah,
not,
exactly.
because it
There's
felt
so
like
many.
when I looked at you there, because we see each other in this,
Right.
like 50 things came to your head right away.
Yes.
So
Like immediately
let's.
there's like this blooming of like an entire bouquet of like, which flower do I pick?
Right.
And I think I would say kind of as an overall piece, I think my justice sensitivity is part of the reason why I struggled to have a flourishing academic career, because I was constantly on the administrations at the schools where I was about how unfair treatments were to different people, I was an adjunct, which means I was working on contract, and how unfair, a lot of that was for me, how unfair, the treatment of the students was sometimes. Like, I was always on about something.
Okay. uh and I'm wondering though, like I'm thinking back to the show that we did on rejection sensitive dysphoria, and kind of putting the two together here. What does this feel like when you combine the two?
Not great.
Okay.
I want to fight for all the people, and everybody hates me for it. Like,
Right.
seriously, that could just be like the summation of my life.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I mean, but truly, like there is, like a big component of being someone who is willing to be vocal. Like, I've never shied away from being the person who says the thing, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
like I did develop some of that in like learning to mask more, but for the most part, I will just flat out say something when things are wrong, or when I perceive them as wrong, and when I perceive them as something that not only we could do better, but that are actively hurting people. And I think it's one of the reasons why I was actually a really great teacher, because I came at teaching writing with having had so much rejection sensitivity around my own writing, having a sense of justice and this justice sensitivity, to wanting to make sure that I tried to make my classrooms as equitable as I could, which is why I very early on adopted teaching methodologies that allowed space for my students to express themselves. Even when I was teaching, that's easy to do when you're teaching creative writing. It's not as easy to do when you're teaching technical writing, which is why, like with technical writing, I made sure my students who were engineers could write in, engineering formats, and they could write documents that were, aimed at their careers, versus having them write something I determined was appropriate for them.
Because I'm restarting my like business show and running that show, and I'm always thinking, I've got business on my mind a lot of the time, right? In thinking about like your career and running a business, like I just interviewed somebody that they just started a business about 2 years ago, and they knew nothing about that particular um, uh, type of business, but they just went for it and they did it. And in interviewing them, I felt like I heard a lot of this like sense for fairness and sense for justice. And so I'm thinking about that interview, and I'm thinking like, I feel like with her, this was a real like a real positive trait. Like this was very, very
Yeah.
positive for her. And in a way, it helped her identify a market and set up a business
Yes.
and run this whole thing. So I feel like, whereas a lot of these, like, things that we talk about, you know, I guess it's easy for me to see the negative. With this, it's really easy for me to see a positive.
Mm.
So help me out. Like, what is the negative here of this? Like, why, where would this be a issue for somebody? Where would this come into play where it would be a problem?
Well, I want to echo that too, and say that I think that justice sensitivity is one of the most beautiful parts of neurodivergent brains, of being neurodivergent.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a lot of appreciation for demand avoidance, pathological demand avoidance, and even rejection sensitivity, because the roots of both of those, and possibly justice sensitivity, is sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it is that, at least in my experience, is often what I was admonished for. Like what people would say to me is like, well, why do you have to be so sensitive? Like, why? That was always something, that was a refrain that I've heard my whole life. And I think all of those things kind of, demand avoidance, rejection sensitivity, and justice sensitivity, all come back to this base thing where, like, I feel things really deeply, right? And I think that that's a beautiful thing now that I
Yeah.
understand that that's the core of what it is. But when I didn't, this is part of what led, all of that is what led to me feeling burned out, right? Like, I'm not kidding in that I wanted to fight every fight,
Right.
and we are not living in times where you can fight every fight, and you can't fight every fight in all the ways you can fight. You have to pick and choose, and you have to be intentional where you put your energy. And that, I would say, if there is a downside to justice sensitivity, it's that, where you want to and desire to help as many people as profoundly as you can, And that would very much lead to burnout, to feeling guilty if I'm not acting. Am I complicit in these bad things that are happening? If I am, not caring deeply for everything, does that mean I have to care for nothing? Like where do we put this, right? And where do we frame this so that we can have something that you can embrace this and not have it drive you into the ground?
I guess, yeah. I mean, it gets back to what I was saying in the beginning is this can be very exhausting.
And, and it manifests slightly differently between like the different types of neurodivergence that we talk about. So when you have primarily ADHD, or when you have ADHD, you tend to be impulsive. You tend to have a sense of moral urgency where things have to happen quickly. And you will jump into a fight before before you think through, right? Before you think through what it means to jump into that fight. That, I would say, was probably when I was mentioning how it impacted my career. That's probably how it impacted my career. I didn't always think about how the things that I said and the things that I pointed out would impact the decision makers who were choosing whether or not I was going to be successful. Just flat out didn't think about that, because for me, we've talked about how impulsivity shows up differently, but the impulsivity was not being able to think through what those pathways were. And if you have autism and you have a strong moral compass and you want a sense of logical consistency that most of the world does not appreciate, and you have integrity-based reasoning, fairness isn't something you generally can flex on. It is not negotiable. And so that makes it even harder. So, depending on where you fall in this like mix of ADHD and autism, and like I've said, I was officially diagnosed ADHD and peer-reviewed diagnosed autistic. I very much believe I am ADHD, right? So a combination of both of these things. That need to jump in, and that feeling like it has to be morally right.
I feel like, and I mean, I've brought up the business thing. I feel like this is sort of like why you're starting this, because you're helping to fight for the rights of people that are neurodivergent and help them through their path.
And I want people to have an easier path than I had.
Right.
If I had understood this about myself, how different would the rest of my life have been? Questions we can't answer, and I don't really want to, but, these are the things I want to help my clients with, that I do help my clients with. I help them understand where some of the things that they're experiencing come from, and it is absolute magic.
To start on that path for people, one of the ways to do that is to set up a call with you, and also to subscribe to your newsletter. So tell us about that.
Yes, I send out a weekly newsletter every Monday, Nerd Notes. So NERD is Neurodivergent Education Resource Discussion, and where I talk a little bit more in depth about the topics that we've covered in the podcast. And in that, you can always find a link to book a clarity call with me, 30 minutes. It's not necessarily a coaching call. It's just a call to talk about someplace in your life that you might need a little clarity.